What's up, y'all? It's 10 at 3 time at Tennessee. How are you? I hope you're doing well on this Friday, January the 23rd, 2026. I have gone an entire week without writing 2025 a single time. And honestly, sometimes it takes February or March before that really happens.
It's impressive.
So I don't need a parade. I don't do this for the honors and the recognition and the adulation, but I mean, I think it's a pretty big deal what has happened there. What else is a pretty big deal? There's a lot going on in the world today. It's actually, I should go ahead and say straight off the bat here, it's me and Daniel Benyo today back there on the ones and twos. Daniel, how you doing, man?
Hey, Wes, I'm doing great. Happy to be here talking about sports and not weather for an hour.
Yeah, it's you were happy to jump away from that grenade, weren't you, for an hour?
100%.
It's and the weather again. It's weird because this happens so many times, and we are always right on that border. It seems like right here in Knoxville in the Valley. It just seems like it's consistently on that borderline of, well, you get is it snow, is it rain, freezing rain, is it sleet, kind of what is it? Is it this lasagna mixture that Cassie and the gang and Todd have been calling it? And it's fascinating because a lot of times things hit the plateau and then they just go north of us, right? And sometimes when weather comes in the other way, it really hurts us. But when it comes in the traditional way, you know, you just never really know. And I feel for, you know, Todd and Cassie and all our weather gang because they are excellent. They are truly, I mean, best in this market, best around. Like, they are fantastic. Todd's been, you know, the man for weather in this area for a long, long time. And they look at these models, and for this thing in particular, and it happens often, but especially this time, you talk about the models being all over the place. It was like there could be no snow, there could be 2 feet of it. Like, that's insane when you think about it. And how do you tell people, hey, you know, this could be, you know, 20 inches of snow. It could be a half inch of ice. It could just be rain and cold. It you know, they're like, we know it's going to be really cold after this thing goes through. Just don't know exactly what it's going to do. And like every 12 hours, it kind of changes a little bit, right, as weather tends to do. And so we've all been sitting here all week, and I say we like I'm part of this. I mean, I guess the same people sign our checks, but you know, I'm not involved in the weather at all. Now, if there's a bunch of bad weather this weekend, you will see me around town, my dumb self being around there, out around town. Getting, I guess, driven around in one of those Jeeps, one of the many Jeeps that we got in the fleet, and saying, hey, kids, you want to get in a sledding contest? You want to throw snowballs? I'll beat you. I'll throw snowballs at a kid. I don't care. That might not make good TV. It might make really good TV. I don't know, but.
Have you seen Elf?
I'm not afraid to throw a snowball at a kid and make that kid cry on air. I'm not afraid to do it. I don't want to hurt them physically, but if I hurt their feelings, I can live with that. It's a tough world out there, you know.
So stay tuned. People might see that from you.
You don't know. And so basically for, I guess, a lot of people probably know this, a lot probably don't, but like when weather hits like an area, bad weather and unusual weather, like an entire news organization becomes weather. For, you know, it's like everybody gets drafted in, like you get the temporary marshal's badge, you're sworn in, and you're a weather team member. And so like if there's like what they say, maybe a half inch of ice or whatever it might be, it's hard to really go anywhere. I mean, you'd rather have a whole bunch of snow than even a little bit of ice. And so there's a chance that like we're all crashing here for like a few days. And it's wild, but it's like summer camp, but in the winter, I think is what I've been told. So it's like one floor works, the other floor is the people off the clock. But
yes, we're going to have a sleeping floor, a working floor.
And even me, like I've said all the time, and I meant this, I can walk to my house from here, but not in that much ice. I'll hit the deck, man. The balance ain't what it used to be. I'll fall several times. So we're going to have to figure all that out. But where, the weather was not here last night just yet. And the Lady Vols had a heck of a win last night against Kentucky. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Obviously, the Tennessee showdown at Alabama over the weekend and the Charles Bediako situation. We are going to talk a lot about that. I mean, I'm not going to pass judgment, but I do have questions, and I think that they're fair questions, and we'll discuss those things. I think there's a way to have this conversation without just saying, oh, this is cheating, or oh, this is bad, or oh, it's not good. It's not good. But I think there's a more layered kind of contextual conversation we could have. Lasagna, if you will. We can have some lasagna also in this conversation. I'm going to want Italian food so bad now for days. I hope they bring us some if we're stuck here. But you can't just keep saying the word lasagna and then not bring us some sauce. You know what I mean? Like you gotta hook us up there. But I think we'll start with the Lady Vols because I think that was a big win last night. And I think it's important. It was not always the most aesthetically pleasing game last night. I think we could all admit that. But I think when you think of these Kim Caldwell teams, you think of all the space and the pace offensively and the hectic, forcing tempo, making people uncomfortable, hitting a lot of threes, doing a lot of these things. But when you are a team who plays that way, a lot of times you have a hard time getting in the mud and wrestling. And when teams make you play a kind of game that maybe you don't really want to play at times and you still find a way to win, that's important. And that's a good basketball team. That's a good Kentucky team that Tennessee beat last night, ranked right there on the borderline of the top 10 for a reason. And I think we would all agree the Lady Vols can play a lot better, at least offensively. But when you have to make a play like that to end a game, and you got to get not one stop but two, because you get the held ball, but Kentucky gets the arrow, and then you got to force another turnover there at the horn. I mean, you get a lot of grit. You get a lot out of those games. And I said this when Tennessee, the men, beat A&M. It's not always the kind of game you want to play, but, that's what opponents do. Like, this goes back to Sun Tzu and the Art of War, right? Like, never do what your opponent wants you to do, right? Never do your opponent a favor. You're not in the business of making things easy for your opponent. You don't say, oh, well, you would like to play this kind of game, sir or ma'am? Then we will play this kind of game that you like, right? This is not like sportsmanlike in that way. It's not like, let's make this a fair fight. If you got better players than the other team, you're not going to be like, let's bench a couple of our best players and make this a fair fight. What do you say? And that's not how it goes. And if a team wants to play fast, you want to throw a wrench into it sometimes. If a team is slower paced, you want to apply pressure, speed them up, make them uncomfortable. Now, sometimes you play the way you play, and the way that you play kind of dovetails nicely with what the other team does, but that's still what you do. So you can't change your entire system for just kind of one game, right? Like, this isn't like that. If it was a season opener, maybe you could, or you get a few weeks for football in the postseason going into a bowl game, maybe you can do it, but kind of got to play within reason the way that you play. And you have to have your own identity, right? And there's something to be said for the way that teams can, play at any speed and win, or they can play the way you play and beat you. They can play the way that they play and beat you. There's a lot of different ways, but what happens ultimately in sports, especially when teams have comparable roster talents overall, just overall the what you would call maybe the mean average there, is that you make a lot of plans. And you make a detailed plan, you go over film, you scout, you do everything. You make sure everybody knows everything about the opponent that they can. You give them the most information you can give them without slowing them down. You give them the most information they can without kind of the mind slowing the feet. But then in football, the ball kicks off. In baseball, first or softball, first pitch comes in. Basketball, the ball gets tipped up in the air. And once that happens, I mean, it's carnage. It's chaos. It's anywhere between 2 and 3 hours or more, depending on the sport, of just pure madness. And all you have to do at that point is, when either the final out is recorded in stickball or the clock goes out in other sports, You just have to have more points than the opponent. Doesn't matter how you do it. And, you could maybe do it more efficiently and win comfortably, and everybody's a little happier. Doesn't always go that way. Sometimes you just have to wrestle and fight and bite and scratch and claw and kick and punch and have more points than the opponent. And when you do that, I think anyone, I don't love the expression of you have to have played ball to really understand it, or you have to have played it or coached it at a high level to really understand it. There's a time and place for that argument. And one of them will be what I'm about to say in a minute, I think. But generally speaking, a lot of people now are finding different ways to succeed as sports coaches, executives, despite never having played the game at a high level, because either physically they couldn't, or they didn't have the work ethic physically, or weren't mentally tough to do that part of it, whatever it is, right? Injuries, it could be anything. But they still prove they know the game. And they can say kind of metrically, you need to be doing this. Numbers say this is your best way to win. So play the percentages, play the odds. This is what you do. This is how you build the roster. This is how you execute. This is the kind of plan you want. This will give you a 10% better chance of winning, or 20% better chance of winning. But one thing that can be really hard to calculate, unless I think you've played the game at least at like a reasonably high level, or you've at least seen a lot of games at a high level from floor level, from like close enough where you can tell what kind of gum they're chewing. You know what I mean? Like right there, like the seats that unfortunately nowadays you kind of have to be really rich to have, but that's life, right? We say what you will about, capitalism, it's what we do. So you get more money, you get better seats. That's how things go. I mean, you can like it or not like it, but until they change the rules, or if they ever do, those are the rules, right? So that's how we live. And so, but when you play at a reasonably competitive level, like at a solid high school or anything around that level, just where you're trying to, people are starting to physically mature and you get kind of a sense for at least a little bit of the speed of the game. Only at that point can you understand that sometimes you make a plan and it just absolutely doesn't work. And I'm not saying it did or didn't last night for them. What I'm saying is a lot of times it never goes exactly how you plan it, ever. Never, ever, ever does anything in sports go 100% to the letter, dotting the I, crossing the T, exactly how you want it. Just doesn't happen. But the ball gets tipped up in the air or kicked off, or the ball gets thrown in for the first pitch, and it's chaos. And you make a plan, and it doesn't matter, because you get, the old Tyson, right? Everybody got a plan until they get punched in the mouth. And then it's like, all right, well, roll up the sleeves. Let's wrestle. Let's fight. I'm going to end with more points than you. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to work harder than you. I'm going to work to get a good break. I'm going to capitalize on it, and I'm going to beat you. And that's how it goes, really. I mean, that's how this thing goes. So I think there is a lot of value in winning ugly. Now, the reason I say that is you don't really want to win ugly all the time unless that's your only way to do it. Unless you are, let's say, traditionally a service academy in football, where you're running some triple, you're running some veer, you're running what you got to run, you're cut blocking, you're doing what you got to do to nullify the usual advantage that the opponent would have in size, strength, all those things. But what you have as a service academy, you have discipline. So you run a very specific discipline system that gives you a better chance to shorten the game and gives you a chance to win. Unless, or you're a mid-major who, we're just physically really strong. So we don't have a lot of good athletes, but we got a bunch of players on this team and they all have 5 fouls and we're going to use them. and we're going to wrestle you, and we're going to make you work deep in the shot clock all night long, and you might win, but you're not going to have fun doing it. Or you're a mid-major who's got to shoot 1 billion threes, and if they're not falling, you're going to get run out of the building because you got nothing else. So unless you have deficiencies, like you're the first year to coach at a big program, right? And so you don't quite have the roster that other people have. Because if you've got a job, it's because somebody else either had a team so good they got promoted or a team so bad they got fired. Usually. There's sometimes middle ground there, but usually you're at one end or the other kind of. And so you don't want to do it all the time in terms of winning ugly unless you have to. And I don't think the Lady Vols necessarily have to do that. Not at this point. They're still building that program, but they got talent. But in no matter the sport, there is value when you have to win ugly by knowing you can do it. Because if you want to win a championship, you want to win the 3 to 4 games or 5 games you got to win in the playoff in football. You want to win the 6 that you got to win in the tournament, or 7 if you're in the first 4. Or you got to win the games that you got to win in the College World Series or Women's College World Series. There will be a time in that postseason run, history proves this usually, where you will have to win ugly. You just very rarely go through and just slaughter everybody. Even Indiana got bogged down at the end there against Miami in that game. And it could have gone either way after some comfortable postseason wins. So there's very rarely can you get through like an entire March Madness without having at least one game you kind of got to sweat a little bit. We've seen it happen, but it doesn't happen often. And so you're going to run into a game like that. And if you have nothing to fall back on in terms of confidence with knowing you can win like that, then it's harder to do that. So, again, I think a couple of ugly wins along the way during a season are really, really good things. They're not fun to watch. They're not. It's just ugly, right? Games in the 50s, 60s. It's not always enjoyable for basketball. It's just not. That's not how a lot of us like to see the game played nowadays. But you got to have that club in your bag. And if you don't have a few different clubs in your bag going into March, I don't think you have. You better have a lot more talent than everybody else if you want to win. You better have a lot more talent than everybody else, or you better have a bunch of clubs in your bag where you can play fast, you can play slow, you can play man, you can play zone, you can play 94 feet, you can play 47 feet, you can play in a phone booth, you can play in acres of space, you can play in hot weather, in cold weather, in elevation, below sea level, underwater, in the mud, in the snow. If you don't have different things that you can do and different things you can fall back on, it's just hard to win a championship. And that's what Tennessee's trying to do in every single sport right now. That's what they think they should be doing. So find different ways to win. Because with the way NIL stuff is now and the way you're not going to have much better talent than everybody else, because that's just not how things go nowadays. So good win last night for the Lady Vols. We'll see. It's a big weekend coming up for the men, too. We're going to talk about that and why that's a complicated situation now or a frustrating one for some people. But it looks like it is what it is with Bediako and all that. So we'll talk about that right when we come back here in just a second on 10 at 3. Secret time.
Oh yeah. Hello, YouTube. Still with you.
Really needed the hydration today. You ever have one of those days where you just wake up and like no matter what you do, you're just, I don't know, maybe I got a flu shot yesterday. Maybe that's what it is. I don't know, but I'm just like the Sahara Desert in here.
Yeah, you've been feeling it? Any aches and pains?
No, not really that. Just an incredibly dry mouth. And so, I'm going to be sipping a lot of water. So if I'd thought ahead of time, I would have put less ice in the cup here with the water, if I'm being honest, so it doesn't clank. Hey. That was a bad decision. That was objectively a bad decision.
We call that gnat sound.
Yeah, that's it's not quite the same as like, beach waves or the thunderstorm sounds that my wife and I, have in our room at night, or the classical for sleep that my son plays. And by the way, I posted last night.
You did.
There is a song that every time it plays on my son's, and this is every single night, it plays on his classical for sleep playlist in the house. And every time I think, is that one by Metallica? Like you hear that and I'm like, am I about to hear James Hetfield going in here? This is the song, by the way. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that, but it's on the socials. It looks French, but I took Spanish, so I know a moderate amount of Spanish, but just about no French. Like, unless it's one of those words that we took our language and, used their language and made that a word, like filet or something like that, those things I would know. But, and I could have a really fun conversation about this one day. There's a lot of things in our language that come more from French than German. Throwing that out there. Welcome back to 10 at 3. Wes Rucker coming to you here on a Friday, January the 23rd, 2026, here at WBIR World Headquarters, where, again, we name it that because we've not found another WBIR out there, but if we do, we'll fight you. I have made this a rule that if there's another BIR somewhere and they think that they have the WBIR World Headquarters, we'll fight them. I'm not saying that we're not looking for a fight. We don't start fights here. We don't pick fights. You know what we do? We finish fights. That's what we're going to do. Now, if I were smart, I would take the weights that I let's say borrowed from our gym here at WBR and use them to weigh down the statue in our office that I don't want the salespeople to try to steal again. So I hooked up some bike bike locks to some dumbbells and some kettlebells and I got that rigged to where I can't make it where they can't take it back, but I can make it where they're not going to be happy to do it. And so, but the bottom line is I need to probably let those weights go because we need them back in the gym. Because if there's another WBR out there, we're going to have to fight them because we've put that out there. And by we, I mean I have. But you can't say you're going to do something and not do it right. I'm now a parent. I can understand this. If you say you're going to do something and you don't do it, the kids remember. They remember. They know these things. They're like, oh, what about when you said this? You didn't do nothing about that. Remember when you said that, there was no screen time past this? What are you looking at your phone for? And I'm like, well, first off, you're too young to have complex thoughts like this. And two, I'm the boss. I do what I want. That's the rule. Who makes the rules here? Me or you? Me or y'all? Speaking of laws, for now, it seems like former Alabama big man Charles Bediako will indeed again be current Alabama big man Charles Bediako because a judge in Tuscaloosa, shocker, has basically granted a temporary restraining order, a TRO, that does not rule on the case but allows, for now, Bediako to come back after 3 years as a professional and resume his career at Alabama in the middle of the season. And it's unusual, to say the least, but it's not shocking. Or maybe shocking but not surprising, I should say. That'd probably be a better way to put it. It's semantics, but I think it's probably a better way to put it. I've made what I think clear on this. Now, again, one of our commandments here on this show, there's a difference in think and know. I'm not going to tell you I know something when it's just my opinion. I'm not going to give you my opinion as if it is a fact. Even if I have an opinion that I think can be backed by numbers, I will tell you this is what I think and here's why I think it. You think what you want. We ain't got to agree. None of us do. That there ain't a rule out there saying we just have to agree. Now, sometimes there are rules saying you got to do this, you got to do that because this is a law but like in our hearts, we don't have to agree on things. In our souls, we don't have to agree on things. And my opinion on this has been pretty consistent. I think when you choose to leave college athletics and you sign a professional contract, even in an era where there aren't really many red lines. That kind of seems like a red line to me. That kind of seems like, you know, you're a pro now, which means you're not an amateur, which means you can't play amateur sports, even in an era where amateur athletes are paid good money, right? Now, I understand that once Baylor was able to get someone through, and they tried to make the rule saying, well, you can do this if you're not from America, but if you're from America, you can't. That always looked dumb. I was like, this is going to last about a month, and someone's going to go to court, and someone's going to say, I'm an American or whatever, but I can still do this, and a judge is going to say, you're darn right you can. And so here we are. It's happened. Alabama is not the only, you know, program I know right now trying to do this, but I'm not bothered by Bediako trying this. And some people are bothered by the hypocrisy of Nate Oates, and I got to be honest. Being a hypocrite's one of the things I just can't stand. It's something that I was raised to just not tolerate. It's the reason why I tell people a lot of things about my life, even though they may not care to know them, because, well, if I'm going to ask people to be public and give honest opinions or give honest answers and be candid and transparent, I better do the same thing myself. Even if people don't care, I still think you're setting an example by doing it. And that's just, a lot of people, I don't expect everyone else in the business to do that, but that's how I view it. So I don't blame Oates, even though he said that things like this, just not long ago, a few weeks ago, said situations like this with the Baylor thing were taking opportunities away from high school kids. And then, less than 3 weeks later, he is now completely going back on that and bringing someone in a virtually identical circumstance. Now, if you want to split hairs, you can say that he's not taking an opportunity away from a high school kid because this isn't somebody who's taken away from the high school recruiting class, because this is not, they went into this season with a spot available. So, okay, splitting hairs there maybe, but okay, I'll give you that. But the reason why I don't care about the hypocrisy of it is that these coaches are paid lavishly, right? But they're given really high expectations, and they're under a tremendous amount of pressure. And so within reason, if they pull every lever they can to give their team a better chance to win, I don't fault them for that. I'm not saying Oates is a good guy or bad guy. I mean, they've certainly had some incidents off the court at Alabama over the years that have made you think, no, how's that basketball program being run? But again, I'm not judging. I'm saying it doesn't look great. And so this situation is obviously not that. This isn't what happened there a couple of years ago, which was significantly worse on so many levels. But I don't blame him for the hypocrisy because of the pressure they're under. And I don't blame the player for trying, because his argument, even if you don't agree with it, it's worth listening to. Most things are worth at least listening to. And I think you have to be fair and listen to them. Doesn't mean you have to agree with them, but I think you do need to listen to them. Because if you don't try to understand something, you're intentionally being ignorant. Don't be ignorant. You know, don't intentionally be ignorant. If you're making a mistake like that, have it be one you didn't know you were making. So at least listen. And his argument is that when he went pro, I guess almost 3 years ago now, that he did not foresee what NIL would become and how lucrative it could be for student athletes, and that he has been irreparably harmed if he is not given that same opportunity, because he would not have left school in the first place if he had known this. Now, I don't know that I agree with that, but I can't sit here and say I don't understand it. I do understand it. Legally, it is an argument worth listening to. And if the judge in this case, who absolutely is an Alabama donor and booster, which makes this really fishy, especially when you look at the situation with Mensa, the quarterback at Duke, the judge in that case basically kicked the can down the road a little bit and said, I don't need to be involved with this case. I'm a Duke donor. I'm a Duke season ticket holder. You're a Duke student athlete, or Duke's involved in this. I don't need to be involved in this. And so he kind of kicked that away. Whereas this Alabama judge, who used to be a lawyer who would represent some Alabama student athletes. And he is an Alabama donor. And his wife, who is still an attorney, represented an Alabama player, basketball player, in a murder trial a couple years ago. That would seem to be conflicts of interest all over the place. And the argument might be that, well, in Alabama, how are you going to find a judge anywhere that doesn't have a connection to either Alabama or Auburn? And, hey, maybe that's true. I don't know. But, and I'm not a legal expert. I'm not a lawyer. My mother-in-law is a lawyer. I should ask her. But my guess on the surface would be you find the nearest district that has a judge that has no significant ties to the university, and you let them handle the situation. Because even if this is the right decision, which, again, he didn't say it's not a permanent solution. He said, here's a TRO. Until this is settled, you can play. And that's different from saying, no, here's the law, boom, done, case closed, you can play. It's the same thing with Pavia last year and Kitzelman and the others as a result of that, the JUCO guys. So, and I think even they had a better argument. I didn't agree with them. I don't think Aguilar should be able to play next season, Joey Aguilar. I don't think that Diego Pavia, Miles Kitzelman, and others should have been able to play this season. I said that from the beginning. I said it now. I'll say it tomorrow. But even that case, I think, had a better argument than this one does. But it's not worth dismissing out of hand. I understand a judge saying, okay, this case is at least questionable enough. There's at least some reasonable doubt here on both sides that we will err on the side of letting you continue to play while we sort this, or letting you go back to play while we sort this out. Legally, I can understand that. What I don't like, and I don't think anyone should like personally, again, think what you want to think. I'm not going to tell you what to think. I'll tell you what I think. I don't think a judge connected to Alabama should be involved in the process because that just doesn't look good. It's objectivity is a fallacy most of the time, if I'm being honest. If we're all humans, I think we have to be really candid and admit that the pure objectivity, like a pure, I don't care to the point where I am completely unbiased and I'm completely 50-50 and I will just hear a case on the merits and I will not let anything else sway me in this matter. I do not think that really exists. And I'm saying that as a journalist. What you do is you try to be as fair as you can. You try to let everybody have their say. But you don't go out there and write or say that the grass is blue because someone tells you the grass is blue. Someone says the grass is green. Someone says the grass is blue. You don't just say, hey, this person said green, this person said blue. You walk your tail outside and you see what color the grass is. That's my opinion of what journalism is anyway. I think if you have evidence, you present it. And you say, this person said this, but by the way, there ain't nothing backing up what they're saying. I just don't like that there's potentially alarming conflict of interest here. And I don't know enough to say that that's affecting this. Because again, if you tilt your head a little bit this way, that way, you can see a reason here. You can see a reason why this ruling would be what it is, even if you don't agree with it. But it shouldn't come from that judge. And I think that's just common sense. And we're losing a lot of common sense in our world, but I think there's some ways where I'd like to try to have it back. I'd like us to try to be able to sit down and say, okay, we don't agree on a lot of things, but that doesn't mean we have to disagree on everything. If this is presented as a fact and we can all agree this is a fact, why are we not all saying this? Like, we used to have more things in society. Well, it's good to question just about everything, but sometimes you can sit here and say, this is 10 fingers. Right here. I guess you could say 8 fingers and 2 thumbs. So you can argue anything. This is 10 digits. And if we can't all agree on that, what in the world are we doing? And I would think that in that situation, you could say, that judge shouldn't be ruling on that. But especially because there's a very recent example of what looks to the untrained legal eyes here of something that, was handled the right way. And so the other complication here is that, and again, this could be potentially legally messy for the NCAA, but just because someone says you are legally allowed to play for now, the NCAA could, in theory, still step in and say, yeah, but if you are ruled ineligible later by law, then you'll have had to forfeit every game played, or we're not going to count these for the tournament because that's our decision. And I don't think the NCAA has the stones to do that, if I'm honest. I just don't think they do. I think they continually go to court and lose, and they get their faces kicked in because they were operating for years as a cartel, more or less. And they got what was coming to them legally in a lot of these cases. But that doesn't mean that they have to just completely give up. And people ask, would you be saying this if this were Tennessee? Yes, I would. I'm sitting here saying everyone loves Joey Aguilar. Everyone loves his family. And I wouldn't think it's the worst thing in the world if he's given time to finish his career, because Pavia and others have done that, or to continue playing. But I don't think that should be the case. I didn't just say last season that I don't think Pavia should have been able to play before the season. I said the same thing about Kitzelman and all the others. I'm pretty consistent on this, if nothing else. Doesn't mean my mind can't be changed later if I'm proven to be wrong or I'm proven to be ignorant about a situation. No one is an expert at everything. You can't know everything, and you have to be open to being wrong. But I just don't, and we'll hear from Rick Barnes in the next segment about this, and I think his answer was pretty reasonable. His answers on the situation were measured. He told you what he thinks because he does, but he also was like, we'll see how this plays out. But he said what he thinks and how he would handle it, he thinks. So, and again, does this impact things? Yes, it gives Alabama a 7-footer who's not going to be like consistently going 20-20, but he's a good player, and he's been playing against pros for 3 years now, and he's 23 or 24 years old. He's going to be a solid player. He's going to help them maybe be a missing piece they need for another Final Four run. So it does matter, but I would be spending exactly the same amount of time on this week if this did not involve Tennessee. If this were an Alabama-Kentucky game, I'd be saying the same thing, because I think this is a huge issue and they need to get it sorted. So we'll talk more about it here after the break. We'll get more on this before we step out for the weekend. But when we come back, we will hear from Rick Barnes about this, because I think he was asked about it this morning, gave some good answers, and we'll give you those, and we'll keep this discussion going right here on a cold, wintry edition of 10 at 3. Secret time. Whew. It's weird to say that. I think people are afraid in our business a lot of times to just say, I don't know.
Yeah.
Because you have this sort of phobia of being a fool or but you don't have to weigh in on everything as an expert, because you can't, if we brought a lawyer in here to talk about this, which if we had more time, maybe we would have been able to get that worked out. Maybe we can in the future and say, hey, will you explain this to us in a way that, because this is what something looks like, but I don't know enough to tell you that's what it is. I'm just sitting here telling you this is what I think, and I'm not an expert, and you should listen to other people. But a lot of us in this business have a phobia of saying I don't know something. Like that makes you seem like I don't know why anyone would expect anyone to know everything. Even about things you cover. You're like, I'm not an expert in this. I always say all the time, I wasn't a college athlete, and the offers that I had to be a college athlete were basically to be a walk-on who sits there and helps a team GPA, I think. And it's I wasn't a coach. I wasn't a high level athlete. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a doctor. So, but health stuff, when legal stuff, you have to sit there and sometimes say, I don't know, but I'm going to ask questions. Because if I don't know, there's a lot of people out there who don't know either. And we got to talk about it. Welcome back to 10 at 3, right here with Wes Rucker and Daniel Benyot here on a Friday, January the 23rd, 2026, talking some things that we know and some things that we don't know, as pretty much every show is a combination of those things. I would argue, in fact, that everything in life is a combination of things you know and things you don't know. And some of the things you don't know are things you actually think you do know, but you don't. And that's where things get really, really, really frisky, right? When you think you know something, but you don't. So it's good generally to go into situations, I think, saying, I don't know. Let's see. Doesn't mean you can't have an opinion. But I can sit here and say, this doesn't feel right. But I don't know that I am authoritative enough to say for sure. But I definitely think, as I've said for the past 20 minutes or more, that I don't think Charles Bediako should be playing against Tennessee this weekend, but I don't blame anybody at Alabama for trying this, because you want to pull every lever you can to win, because the pressure is what it is at this level. But Rick Barnes, who is often – we've talked about the difference between Rick Barnes and Josh Heupel, and there are many of them. One of them is that, Josh Heupel is very, very selective about when he'll come out and say something that is not about his program, something globally, something more in the realm of the NCAA or the SEC at large, or certainly off the field. He doesn't go anywhere near a lot of that stuff. Like, I'd be shocked, if you ever saw him going that route. He'd have to completely rework his DNA, I think, to do that. And Rick Barnes will tell you what he thinks about anything. And he won't say all the time that I know this has to be this, but he'll tell you what he thinks and what he feels. And naturally, since Tennessee is heading down to Tuscaloosa today, playing Alabama tomorrow, and Charles Bediako, according to Nate Oates, at least the last I've seen anyway, is that he should be, they're going to play him. So here's Rick Barnes talking about that. It's a few minutes. I think it's about 3 minutes, and he had a bunch of good answers on this, and I think he says a lot of interesting stuff. But here's Rick Barnes from Friday morning talking about this.
You prepare for Alabama like normal, or is it change with the old Charles Bediako?
No, we do it the same way. We're going to prepare. Obviously we talked about him personnel like we would anybody else, and that's the extent of it.
What's your view on these G League guys trying to come back and get college eligibility?
I don't, and I'm not making this comment based on this case or whatever happened earlier. I don't know all the ins and outs of it. It's to me, it's simply, everybody comes to college and they have college eligibility. When you make the choice to give up your college eligibility, you've given it up. And I don't care if it's someone that has been in the service come back once they start that clock and they make that choice. They've made that choice. And sometimes, and we know this, that some of those choices haven't been good through the years. And I could say that with some of the players that I've coached. And they would tell you that if they were standing here. But once you make the choice, you've made the choice. And without diving deep into it, because we could sit here all day and talk about all the different angles, this, that, or whatever, but just in a nutshell, that's what I think. Once you make that choice to leave college, you've made that choice.
Would you stay true to that fundamental, or if this rule becomes more prevalent, do you in roster assembly start looking at it in a different light?
Well, you have to adapt. I mean, there's no doubt that's the key to all this is you have to adapt to it. I think for us older coaches have been in it a long time, and we can go back to the days where, the NCAA would, you felt like they were watching every move, secret police. And now you wonder what's going on, but I think it's out of the hands of the NCAA when judges start stepping in. I mean, what can they do? And I don't know where it has got to this point, to be honest. I don't know where it's going to end, but all I can say is whatever the rules become or whatever they are, they fold into, we have to adapt, whether we like it or not. But we've also got to be true to the guys that we recruit. When you go out and recruit them, you make a commitment to them, and I don't know if we'll per se say save a scholarship if something like this should happen. I like to think that once we start in the spring with the team that we have and we know the roster, because you know what, it was there is no doubt that Ethan and Clarence, JP and Jalen, they missed a lot. You know, they missed a lot, and they really want to do the right thing for us. They want to work and play, and we believe in them. But they missed a lot of basketball, so I can't imagine trying to add someone to the roster in the middle of the season. Personally, I can't, because we're trying to continue to get this group and that we believe in with our whole heart. So you adapt, but it's still, you'll have to have your own philosophical philosophy in terms of how you see it.
And that was Tennessee basketball coach Rick Barnes from Friday morning, this morning, as we're recording this, doing this live. I always say all the time, I guess we say we're recording this because we are doing it live, but we're also recording it for posterity because, you know, plays at 7 p.m. again. It lives on the site year-round on the 10 News mobile app and the WBR Plus Smart TV app, the website, everywhere. So we can say we're recording. That's fine. I don't know if there's a word that says you're doing something live while simultaneously recording it. Feels like the Germans would have a word for that because they have, in their language, they have so many wonderful words that are things that we would have to say in a sentence, and they can say it in one word.
Live and capture.
Yeah, they're, Schadenfreude, any of those, right? There's a bunch of them. And so I think I like what Rick Barnes said there first because I think it's, as anything Rick Barnes says, he's very honest about it, whether you agree with him or not. And I think it's important that you could tell by that he wasn't demonizing anybody, which I think is the right way to go about this, because I think you have to understand why a coach would feel the need to do some of this stuff. And I think you have to understand why a player would want to either financially or competitively take advantage of a situation like this. Again, you pull every lever you can pull within reason in your life for success for yourself, for the people around you, your family. That's life. And he also said that he doesn't understand how things have gotten to this point and why the law is having to step in. I can answer that one. Because the NCAA had a long time to get ahead of this stuff, and it was obstinate, and it didn't do it. It was obstinate, it was arrogant, it was stubborn, and it fought this tooth and nail along the way, every step, until eventually it got to a point where it went to court. And when it goes to court, what you're doing is a racket. That's why people wanted in the first place to say, wait, how much money are you making with this? And why is the labor not reaping the benefit of any of this? Why do they not even have control over their own name, image, and likeness? And you can say what you want about where the NIL guardrails are and are not, and how things have gotten here and who's eligible and who's not. But the basis of this entire thing, the genesis of this, was obstinance and arrogance, and I would argue pure stupidity by the NCAA for years. That's how it got to this point. That's why courts are involved, because the adults in the room could not be adults, could not see, forest for the trees, could not see where things obviously were heading. So here we are. We're in the Wild West now, and got to get it. Good luck putting toothpaste back in the tube, by the way. Good freaking luck with that. Good luck with that. And I said that as someone who's a dad now who sees, kids just empty like entire things of toothpaste like in the sink and say, look what I did. It's a smiley face. I'm like, that's not what you're supposed to do.
When we did that as kids, it was not nearly as expensive.
Absolutely. Now it's like, what's this toothpaste cost? What's in this toothpaste? Is there actually gold in this toothpaste? Is there stainless steel in this to clean your teeth? This is immaculate. Man, this better be the best stuff that's ever made. Can you eat this too? Is it a sauce you can put on bread? I mean, is this jelly? I would say some kids' toothpaste basically are jelly, but I mean, it's important to note, and some would say with what Barnes said about adding a player through the regular, like he wouldn't want to add a player at this time of year. He's done that recently, but that was with the kid coming from, a high school, so that's That was a little different because that was a player who was going to come in the next year anyway. Comes in a year early because, they needed help in the backcourt, and they're like, hey, you can come a year early, right? So come on. With him obviously talking about Santiago Vescovi. But I think when you talk about some rules with international athletes, I think you get to a problematic spot because you do have to admit that purely with international students, they come up athletically in a different way. They don't have as many organized like youth sports in terms of amateur things. What they have are professional teams professional clubs that have youth teams. That's their development system. So they might technically be like a soccer player who plays for Arsenal or a basketball player who plays for Real Madrid or Barcelona, and they, or the French guys who come through their French pro clubs. Because a lot of these clubs are actually not just soccer teams, they're athletic, they're basketball, handball, a bunch of other things too. And so they come from a different background. So they play for a professional club, but they don't necessarily sign professional terms yet. So you have to kind of understand maybe that those rules are a little bit different. I think you have to be a little sensitive to that or understanding of that. But it's one of those, I get back to, again, it's the Supreme Court case years ago, and it was about, I don't know of a better way to say this, it was the Supreme Court case about pornography. And the judge says, you just know it when you see it. And that's why you get to a situation where you're like, I know this isn't right now, or I think this isn't right. But then where do you draw a line? That's where they really need to get together and draw lines on this. Wherever it is, and I think Barnes said that, just tell us where the lines are. Just tell us where the lines are and tell us what we can do, what we can't do, and then we'll run our programs the way we see fit within those rules, or we'll get in trouble for it, which is fair. And this whole thing, it's really unfair to a lot of people because, you could argue, and obviously this judge felt it was at least worth argument enough to say, for now, we're going to let you play because that's how unfair this is to you. Well, but then if it's what about everybody else? What about the opponents who are playing Alabama now? What about the other big guys at Alabama who want to play in the rotation now? What about, what's fair to some can be unfair to others. And so you get back to a question of what are we really doing here? And we're in a mess. There's no doubt about it. In college sports, I say we as someone who covers college sports and has for a quarter century now. My professional life has been dedicated to this. So I say we because I'm a part of the structure, right? We're in the framework. Those of us who cover it, we're in the framework. We're a part of the picture. We're a part of the tapestry. And so I say we in terms of we as an industry here are in a tough spot. Now, it's not one that can't be resolved. It's not, I don't think. And I don't think it's one that can't come to some sort of a reasonable agreement on what's left, what's right, what's front, what's back, what's cool, what's not, what's allowed, what isn't, what's kosher, what isn't. I mean, I fundamentally believe there is a way here. And I believe I'm the person to say what it is? No. But we all should have ideas. And things like this, sometimes you have to start, you don't like to do this, but sometimes you kind of have to start a problem from the solution and then go backward. And I almost never advise that because that taints the process, I think. In so much as I understand it, it taints the process. In my mind, it does. But I think there are circumstances where you have to say, okay, we know this isn't cool, so we're going to find a way to get to that answer. And that might be the only way to do this. But, I mean, when you get courts involved in the first place, they're in. When the government steps in, it's in there. And however you feel about that's entirely up to you. And I'm not opening that can of worms. Not today. I've got 1 minute left in the show. Not the time to do that. Because there are some of us who feel a certain way, some others who feel a certain way, and that welcome to the great debate of the history of our republic, right? We're getting there, right? It's a work in progress. Some forward, some back. We'll get there eventually, right? It's the best form of government. It's the worst form of government except all the others, right? As Benjamin Franklin would say. So it's, but once they're in there, they're in there. And now you're going to have to figure this out with them. So for now, Tennessee, buckle up. You're playing a guy who's played pro ball for 3 years now, or 2.5 years. So, good luck with that. They can't bring Uros Plavsic back in, can they? Have him come in just for one game? Be like, if they get him, we get ours. But it is what it is. He's going to play. He's a good player. He's not a Hakeem Olajuwon, but he's a good player. And we'll see how that goes for Tennessee. I didn't love that matchup really anyways where it was. So I've seen worse, but I think Tennessee could be fine in the long run, but I don't know how I feel about this particular game, even with or without the Bediako thing. I just don't love this particular matchup at this particular time for Tennessee. And it doesn't change anything about the big picture. But maybe they'll surprise me. Maybe it'll be better than I think it is. Maybe it'll be terrible. I don't know. We'll see. But regardless, we'll be talking about it in 71 hours, and we might be talking about gosh knows what else with the weather. Be safe this weekend. Very last thing, guys. If this thing gets bad, find people around you. If there are elderly people around you and you don't know if they have family, if you don't know if they have friends, make sure they're all right. Do that, please. Y'all be safe this weekend. We'll see you in 71 hours.